The galaxy believed erasing humanity's colonies would end the problem. They celebrated too early. Earth did not mourn in public. It prepared in silence. And when humanity finally answered, it wasn't for revenge alone, it was the beginning of an extinction war that would rewrite galactic history. The harvest, the year was 2347, and humanity had finally learned to walk among the stars. 23 colonies stretched across nearby systems, each one a testament to human ambition and hope. On these distant worlds, children played under crimson suns, farmers grew crops in alien soil, and families built lives far from the cradle of Earth. Among these colonies, Meridian shone brightest. 2 million souls called this ocean world home, building floating cities that danced on gentle waves. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the cargo hauler Persistence, making routine supply runs between Meridian and the mining outposts in the outer system. She was 42 years old, a veteran of 20 years in space, and she had seen humanity's firsthand. Every trip brought news of new settlements, new discoveries, new reasons to believe that mankind had finally found its place in the universe. She had no way of knowing that everything was about to end. The Caldroth Collective arrived without warning. Their ships emerged from the darkness between stars like predators stepping into light. No communication, no demands, no explanation. The first anyone knew of their presence was when the orbital platforms around New Boston simply ceased to exist, reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. Within hours, the colony below was burning. 600,000 people died before they understood they were under attack. Sarah was 3 days out from Meridian when the distress signals began flooding every frequency. Her communications officer, a young woman named Lisa Park, turned pale as she listened to the desperate messages. Colonies were falling one after another. New Boston, Haven's Rest, Prosperity Point. The voices on the recordings screamed and begged and fell silent. Each transmission ended the same way, with static and emptiness and the cold certainty of death. The Caldroth ships were unlike anything in human experience. They moved with impossible grace. Their weapons turned planetary shields into useless decorations. Human defense forces fought with everything they had, but it was like throwing stones at a hurricane. The alien vessels were larger, faster, and equipped with technology that made human achievements look primitive. Colony after colony fell dark. The death toll climbed into the millions. Then tens of millions. Sarah made a decision that saved her life and condemned her to witness humanity's darkest hour. Instead of running to Meridian, instead of trying to help, she ordered the Persistence to hide. They found a massive asteroid field and buried themselves deep within its tumbling rocks. There, surrounded by stone and ice, they watched and recorded everything. Their sensors captured the Caldroth attack patterns, ship configurations, weapon signatures, and tactics. Every detail was logged and saved. Meridian lasted longer than most colonies. The ocean world had robust defenses and a small fleet of patrol ships. Governor Thomas Blackwell refused to surrender. He rallied his people, organized evacuations, and fought for every minute of survival. The battle for Meridian lasted 6 terrible days. Sarah watched from hiding as the city ships were systematically destroyed. She watched as escape pods were hunted down and vaporized. She watched as the oceans themselves began to boil under the alien bombardment. On the 7th day, Meridian went silent. 2 million voices stopped screaming. The Caldroth ships remained in orbit for another 12 hours, methodically destroying anything that might have survived. Then they moved on to the next colony, and the next until all 23 worlds had been reduced to ash and memory. 15 billion human beings had lived on those colonies. When the Caldroth finished their work, none remained. The aliens broadcast a message to Earth on every possible frequency. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated by algorithms into human language. Your species has been evaluated and found unsuitable for coexistence. Your expansion ends here. Do not venture beyond your home system again, or you will face complete extinction. The message repeated for hours, then stopped. The Caldrith fleet gathered at the edge of human space and waited, as if daring Earth to respond. Sarah-chan kept the persistence hidden for 3 more weeks, gathering intelligence and waiting for the Caldrith to leave. When the alien fleet finally departed, she immediately set course for Earth. The journey took 19 days. 19 days of silence and grief and rage. Her crew worked like automatons, speaking only when necessary, eating without tasting food, sleeping without rest. They had survived, but survival felt like betrayal. Earth received the news in waves of horror that grew into tsunamis of rage. The governments of the world had been moving toward unity for decades, but old rivalries and ancient hatreds still divided them. The Caldrith attack accomplished what centuries of diplomacy could not. Within 48 hours of Sarah's arrival, the Emergency Global Council was formed. Every nation surrendered its military forces to a single command structure. Every factory began retooling for war production. Every scientist turned their attention to weapons development. General Marcus Rivera emerged as humanity's military leader. He was 58 years old, a career soldier who had fought in the Resource Wars and the Martian Rebellion. He had never lost a battle, and he had never faced an enemy like this. Rivera looked at Sarah's sensor data and understood immediately what humanity faced. The Caldrith possessed overwhelming technological superiority. In any conventional war, they would crush Earth as easily as they had crushed the colonies. But Rivera also saw something else in the data. The Caldrith were arrogant. They had destroyed the colonies with contemptuous ease, using minimal forces and standard tactics. They viewed humanity as insects, annoying but ultimately harmless. They had made a fatal mistake. They had given Earth time to prepare, time to adapt, and time to become something they would never expect. The Caldrith had won the first battle, but the war had only just begun. The reckoning General Marcus Rivera stood in the underground command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains. The war room hummed with activity as officers coordinated the greatest military buildup in human history. On the main display, a holographic map showed Earth's defenses growing stronger by the day. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels designed for one purpose only: to make the Caldrith bleed. Rivera had spent 6 months transforming Earth's military from a collection of national forces into a unified war machine. The Terran Defense Force now numbered 3 million soldiers, sailors, and pilots. They trained with an intensity born of desperation and rage. Every one of them had lost someone in the colonies. Every one of them wanted revenge. But Rivera knew that rage alone would not win this war. Humanity needed an edge, something the Caldrith would never expect. Dr. Amira Osi provided that edge. She was a quantum physicist from Ghana who had spent 20 years developing theoretical weapons that everyone said were impossible. Before the attack, her research had been dismissed as fantasy. After the attack, she was given unlimited resources and told to make the impossible real. She worked in a laboratory complex beneath the Sahara Desert, surrounded by the brightest minds humanity could gather. Osi's breakthrough came on a cold November morning. She had discovered a way to manipulate quantum entanglement on a massive scale, creating weapons that could bypass conventional shields entirely. Her prototype disruptor could tear apart matter at the atomic level, turning solid metal into clouds of disconnected particles. When she demonstrated the device for Rivera, the general watched as a 10-ton block of titanium simply ceased to exist. He looked at her with something approaching hope for the first time in months. The production facilities went into overdrive. Within 3 months, every Terran warship carried quantum disruptors. The weapons were crude and unstable, but they gave humanity something it desperately needed: the ability to hurt ships that had seemed invincible. Asay did not stop there. She developed mines that existed in quantum superposition, invisible until they activated. She created communication jammers that could disrupt Caldrith coordination across entire star systems. She turned theoretical physics into instruments of war. Commander James Reeves led the first field test of the new weapons. He was 35 years old, the youngest ship captain in the fleet. and he had volunteered for what everyone expected to be a suicide mission. The retribution was equipped with the latest quantum disruptors and crewed by volunteers who knew they might not return. Their target was a Cauldrith supply depot in the abandoned system that had once been Colony Prosperity Point. The retribution entered the system using stealth technology adapted from Sarah, unsuccessful hiding in the asteroid field. They approached the depot slowly, cautiously, like predators stalking prey. The Cauldrith had 3 ships guarding the facility, confident that no human vessel would dare attack. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Reeves waited until his ship was at optimal range, then gave the order to fire. The quantum disruptors activated with a sound like reality tearing. Beams of twisted energy lanced across space and struck the nearest Cauldrith ship. The alien vessel's shields flared and held for exactly 2 seconds before the disruptor beam punched through. The ship's hull began to disintegrate, sections of it simply vanishing as molecular bonds were severed. Within 30 seconds, the Cauldrith ship was debris floating in the void. The other 2 alien vessels reacted with shocking speed. But Reeves had anticipated this. The retribution released a spread of quantum mines that materialized directly in the enemy's flight path. The second Cauldrith ship flew into the minefield and was torn apart by multiple simultaneous explosions. The third ship managed to transmit a distress signal before Reeves destroyed it with concentrated disruptor fire. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. Reeves immediately ordered his ship to withdraw. They had accomplished their mission and proved that human weapons could kill Cauldrith vessels. More importantly, they had sent a message. Humanity was no longer helpless prey. The news of the successful attack spread across Earth like wildfire. People who had lived in fear for months suddenly felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. Rivera did not waste time celebrating. He knew the Cauldrith would respond to this attack, and he was ready for them. The Terran Strike Force had been training for 6 months, preparing for the moment when humanity would stop hiding and start hunting. 500 warships, equipped with quantum weapons and crewed by soldiers burning for revenge. Waited in orbital formation around Earth, they would not wait much longer. The Cauldrith response came 3 weeks later. A fleet of 80 ships entered the solar system, more than enough to destroy Earth's defenses under normal circumstances. But circumstances were no longer normal. The Cauldrith commander, a being called Beckmore, broadcast a message to Earth that dripped with contempt. You have destroyed our property and killed our soldiers. For this crime, your species will be exterminated. Prepare for annihilation. Rivera's response was brief and delivered in a voice of cold iron. Come and take our world if you can. But know this, you have awakened something in humanity that you will regret. We are no longer the victims you slaughtered. We are the storm that will sweep you from the stars. The transmission ended, and the Terran Strike Force launched from Earth orbit. The Battle of Luna began in the shadow of humanity's ancient moon. The Cauldrith fleet advanced in standard formation, expecting to overwhelm Earth's defenses through superior firepower and technology. They had destroyed 23 colonies using these same tactics. They expected Earth to fall just as easily. Instead, they flew into a killing field that had been prepared with cold precision and burning hatred. The quantum mines activated first, materializing throughout the Cauldrith formation. Explosions ripped through the alien fleet, destroying 12 ships before they could react. Then the Terran warships engaged, their quantum disruptors punching through shields that had seemed impenetrable. Human pilots flew with suicidal courage, pressing attacks that left no room for retreat. They rammed damaged ships into enemy vessels. They detonated their own reactors rather than surrender. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Cauldrith fleet had been reduced to 30 ships that fled the system in disorder. Earth had lost 200 vessels, but humanity had won its first major victory. More importantly, they had proven that the Cauldrith could be beaten. The aliens were not invincible gods. They were just another species, and they could die like any other. News of the victory spread beyond Earth, carried by automated probes to every corner of human space. On worlds that had been silent for months, hidden survivors emerged from bunkers and caves. They looked up at the stars and dared to hope again. Across the galaxy, other species who had watched the Cauldroth rampage with silent terror began to whisper among themselves. The humans had fought back. The humans had won. General Rivera stood in the war room and looked at the casualty reports. 200 ships lost meant 20,000 dead. 20,000 soldiers who would never see their homes again. But their sacrifice had bought humanity something precious: time and momentum. The Cauldroth would return, stronger and angrier than before. But when they came, they would find humanity ready and waiting. Dr. Osei was already working on new weapons, more terrible and more effective than anything she had created before. Commander Reeves was training new pilots in the tactics that had proven successful. Captain Sarah Chen had taken command of a new ship and volunteered to lead raids behind enemy lines. All across Earth, humanity prepared for the next phase of the war. The Cauldroth had started this war expecting easy extermination. Instead, they had awakened a species that refused to die quietly. Humanity had been forged in the fires of loss and tempered by the need for survival. They were no longer builders and dreamers. They were warriors, and they would not stop fighting until every colony was avenged and every alien threat was eliminated. The Extinction War had begun, and humanity intended to finish it.